This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 423 of the Stable Scoop Radio Show. Please support our sponsors as they make this show possible.
Our wonderful sponsors this week are Equestrian Collections and listeners like you, our auditors. Author Elizabeth Letts joins us to talk about her amazing book, The Perfect Horse, the daring U.S. mission to rescue the priceless stallions kidnapped by the Nazis. Plus, our Equestrian Collections product review is the Gatsby Nylon Breakaway Halter. Listen in.
Welcome to the Stable Scoop, with weekly shows delivered right to you. With Helena and Glenn the Geek, live from the stable, it's every week. They bring you the news through hail or high water, while using their tails as their own fly swatters. So sit on down and laugh till you poop, cause it's time again for Stable Scoop. Stable Scoop. Stable Scoop. Stable Scoop.
This is Glenn the Geek.
And this is Helena B., and you're listening to the Stable Scoop Radio Show on the Horse Radio Network.
International Podcast Day is September 30th, and you can help spread the word. International Podcast Day is dedicated to promoting podcasting worldwide. You may be asking, what can I do to get involved? It's pretty simple. First, head over to internationalpodcastday.com and check the suggestions. Second, use hashtag Podcast Day to join in the conversation. Remember September 30th. Now, let's start the conversation.
That's right. It is International Podcast Day this Friday, and we're encouraging all of our listeners on Friday to do a couple of things. One is we would love for you to go on Facebook and tell everybody why you listen to the shows you listen to. Maybe put a link to the Stable Scoop or the Horse Radio Network website and tell everybody how passionate you are about listening to the show. Kind of give them an education on online radio. We had this whole conversation on the Auditor Facebook page about people go out and they try and talk to people about podcasts, but they still don't know what a podcast is. We're still running into that problem all these years later, Helena. So it's almost easier to say it's an internet radio show. You listen on the internet or you listen on your phone. Mention to people that they can download the Horse Radio Network app, iOS or Android, or take their phone from them, go to the app store and download it for them and show them how easy it is to listen to a show. Your help would be greatly appreciated. It's one day a year that we really have you push getting the word out about us. If everybody goes to 2 or 3 people, Helena, we triple the size of our audience.
Yeah, I know. Wouldn't that be nice?
At your barn, at your place of work, if you have work with other horse people, and on Facebook, on Twitter, any of the social media you do, just help us get the word out. Later in the week, we are going to have some artwork that you'll be able to share as well. So look for that on our Facebook pages, and you can just share that. So that'll be on all the Facebook pages later in the week. So any help you can give us on Friday, we would certainly appreciate it. Helena and I love the fact that you listen, and we'd love to have a ton more of you out there. If you're an auditor, it's a requirement. You just don't have a choice because we're making it.
Because you're family.
Yeah, that's right. Family has to cooperate. And then the other thing that's very, very exciting is, and this just worked out this way, we didn't plan it this way, it will be our 5,000th episode on Horses in the Morning on Friday morning, International Podcast Day. It's going to be the 5,000th episode that we have done on Horse Radio Network. So, and there are very few networks in the podcast world that have hit 5,000 episodes. I asked around to Dave and some of our other friends, Helena, in the podcast world, and their guess was 5 to 10 at the most. So we're an elite company, and we want to celebrate with you. We're opening up the phones live on Horses in the Morning on Friday morning from 9:30 to 10:30. Give us a call. Say hi. We're going to have all our hosts call in and say hi and hang out. So it's just going to be a big party. We would love to have you join us on Horses in the Morning, 9:30 to 10:30 Eastern. Give us a call. We'll post the phone numbers on our Facebook pages. It's 435-272-1010. 888-981-1997. And we just want to hear from as many listeners as possible. And in that hour period of time, we'd love to have you join us and just celebrate with us and have fun with us. And of course, I have to thank all the sponsors and all our auditors and the hosts, especially one Helena B., who has been here since day one. So
since negative day one.
5,000 episodes. That's just, when I think about that, I get tired, actually.
5,000.
Tired.
I know. You're a busy dude.
I'm tired.
Yeah.
That's
Didn't
a
you
lot
just
of work.
come back from vacation, though?
Yes, we did, actually. And everything's happening at once. We got International Podcast Day, the 5,000 episode mark. You know, we haven't been celebrating all the marks that we come to because we have so many and the milestones. But, you know,
Yeah.
5,000 episodes is pretty. When I tell other podcasters that, they just don't believe it. Because if you're doing one podcast, you hit 200 or 300, you're excited that you've made it that far, number one, and that you've gone that long, which is a couple of years usually if you're doing a weekly one.
Heck, I'm only on episode 31.
And you're excited, right? I mean, you should be. You should
Yeah.
be, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, when
Geez,
we
think
started,
about
they
that.
said, what are you going to talk about?
What are we going to talk about? Two people who can gab?
Yeah, but didn't that what they asked us? What are you going to talk about after a couple of weeks? You've talked about everything. We've interviewed over 6,200 guests.
Oh,
I mean,
and there's more out there.
well, every week.
There are more out there we've yet to interview.
We have a great one coming up today, and Elizabeth Letts, the author, we're so excited to have her, by the way, that she's kind enough to do this with us. She's kind of famous. She wrote The $80 Champion, and now this new book, which I'm absolutely loving. But, you know, these people are gracious enough to give their time to us, to come on our little show, and to you, to listeners, to share what they have to talk about. And our listeners this year, our numbers are up this year because people love hearing about other horse people. So, yeah, we'll never ever run out of guests. You're doing a show on a town, Newport. You're never going to run out of guests.
A town and love.
Yeah.
Romance.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking, but you have a limited number. What? There's 60,000 people that live there, maybe? Is that right?
A little more than that, yeah.
Yeah. So
because it covers the whole sort of area. But yeah, we got
yeah. I mean,
there's no limit. It's a global destination, so we can really pick anybody or any place in the world, and it has some connection.
You
back
have
to
not asked Jennifer and I to come on and talk about our honeymoon in Newport yet.
You're on our list. You're on our guest
Okay,
list.
Just checking.
We're booked, baby.
'Cause we
We're
did
booked.
honeymoon there, so just saying. Now that was 30 years ago, but
Well, I'm waiting and to compare notes. So after Buck and I go through our major milestone, then we'll have you and Jen on and we can compare notes.
oh darn, why don't I have the wedding music again? But I don't.
I love to catch you off guard.
Yeah, you did catch me off guard. I don't have the wedding music. Oh, darn it. So yeah, we will be we will be doing that on Friday morning. That is what's the date? The 30th. So look for it then. We'd love to have you join us then. So you want to go on with today's show?
We can go on with today's show. We have a cool guest. We've got two cool guests, actually. One cool guest and one cool product reviewer.
Yes, we do. And right after this word from Equestrian Collections, we're going to talk to Elizabeth Letts. She's an author, best-selling books. She wrote The $80 Champion, The Story of Snowman. And also, she just finished a book called The Perfect Horse, The Daring U.S. Mission to Rescue the Priceless Stallions Kidnapped by the Nazis. And I'm a history nut. I'm loving this book. Did you know that Equestrian Collections has a monthly outfit giveaway? That's right. This month's sweepstakes ends on the 7th of October and includes a complete Noble Outfitters outfit. Signature breeches, performance shirts, Noble Outfitters back-to-back belt, on-the-bit bracelet, and over-the-calf petties, a $250 value. You can enter at equestriancollections.com/sweepstakes. Too late for this giveaway? Then there's always a new one. So stop over to equestriancollections.com/sweepstakes every month to register to win. Plus, winter is on the way sooner than you think, and Equestrian Collections has a complete line of winter clothing for you and your horse. Visit Equestrian Collections today to check out all the winter options. EquestrianCollections.com is your source for winter gear that you will need this year. Well, hi, Elizabeth. Welcome back to the Horse Radio Network. It's been a few years.
It has, and I'm so glad to be back.
Well, we so enjoyed talking to you about your last book, The $80 Champion, of course, the story of Snowman. But now I am a history nut. Helena will verify that.
Emphasis on nut.
Yeah. I love history. I love World War II history especially, and this book is right up my alley. What we're talking about is The Perfect Horse, the daring U.S. mission to rescue the priceless stallions kidnapped by the Nazis. So just give us the overview of the book, and then we'll get into more detail, because I've listened to about half of it now.
Sure. Well, it's the incredible story. It's a true story, and it takes place just in the very last days of World War II, where it turns out that during the war, the Germans had gone all over the parts of Europe that they were occupying and taken all of the most valuable horses. And in particular, they had taken the white Lipizzaner of Vienna, Austria, as well as some of the world's most priceless Arabian horses. And they had put them all in a single stud farm, and it was in a very hidden place on the border of Czechoslovakia, where they thought that the horses would be safest. But unfortunately, believe it or not, the Germans, who had gotten into, all kinds of terrible things during the war, were trying to apply some of their racial theories that they had about people to horses. And these white horses, they were going to try to breed the perfect horse. And not just the perfect horse, actually they wanted to breed the perfect military horse. But as the war was ending, this little enclave that they thought was so safe wasn't so safe anymore, because the Russian army was approaching. And by the end of April 1945, the big, giant Red Army was just, maybe less than a day's journey away. And the Russian army was starving. And so they were slaughtering livestock, including horses, as they went to feed their hungry troops. The Germans, who were on the ground taking care of the horses, had been told to stay and fight. But because these Germans were, above all, horse people, they couldn't stand the thought that these horses would be lost in the war for no reason. And so, unbeknownst to them, just on the other side of the border in Germany was a group of American soldiers. And when the American soldiers got wind of the fact that these priceless horses were nearby, they decided to see if they could do a secret mission into Czechoslovakia to rescue the horses with the cooperation of these German horsemen. And what was so incredible about this was the fact that Americans were not allowed to go into Czechoslovakia at all. That was Russian territory. That had already been decided by Roosevelt and Stalin. They were not supposed to sneak across enemy lines, and certainly not to rescue horses. But you're all horse people, and I am a horse person, and what we know is that horse people will do anything for horses. And that's what happened.
Boy, and that really... Go ahead.
Sorry. I'm like at the edge of my seat right now.
Oh, you will be when you're listening to this book, reading this book, too.
I am. When did you first hear of this story, Elizabeth?
Well, it's really interesting how I came across the story. So many of your listeners may be familiar with an old Disney movie called The Miracle of the White Stallions, which came out in 1962. But oddly enough, because I'm a little bit younger, I had never seen that movie or heard of it. And I also had never really heard, many people have sort of at least heard in passing that the Lipizzaner were rescued by the Americans. I had never heard it at all. So I was in Virginia researching the $80 Champion. I had a fellowship at the National Sporting Library in Virginia, which is the United States' and really one of the world's premier
We just had them on the show a couple weeks ago, actually. Yeah.
They're incredible. And they had given me a fellowship to do research, for which I'm extremely grateful. And I was researching the $80 Champion. I was just sort of looking at things about horses. I mean, the military horses just passed very, very briefly in the story of the $80 Champion because some thought that Snowman may have been sired by an army stallion. So I found this box, and in the box there were these pamphlets about army horses. and I found this kind of dog-eared old pamphlet, and it said, "A Parade of European Horses," and it was in Virginia in 1946. And it was really just a pamphlet. It was made out of paper. And I flipped it open, and somebody had written notes in pencil on this document, and they were still there. But the names of the horses, they were Polish Arabians and Lipizans from Yugoslavia and Austria. And I thought, what is this? This doesn't make any sense. Why are these horses here? And then further intriguing me was whoever had this, whatever anonymous person had this pamphlet in the first place, had penciled their notes about the horses in the margins. And they had written things like, "These are the world's most extraordinary horses," or "priceless," or "incredible," things like that. And here I'm holding this document in my hand, and I don't know why it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know why. That was how I discovered the story, and that was what made me, pursue it until I figured it out.
The detail I'm up to the point where we're starting to talk about the Americans now.
Yes.
But the first basically half of the book is all about what was happening in Russia with the Germans and the Nazis and the Russians and all that stuff. What was happening in Germany, I mean, and how many times these poor horses had to move. Just incredible detail. And I realize it's a historical novel, but how did you get all the detail, especially when it comes to Gustav Rau, who was was Hitler's chief of horse breeding, who had all these dreams of making the perfect white horse. Did he leave diaries? How did you get so much detail on the plans and what they had hoped to do?
Well, that part of the story was very interesting to me. And what happened was interesting when you look at World War II history from the European perspective. There are pieces of what happened in Germany and Austria and Czechoslovakia during the war that have really not been looked at very much by historians until fairly recently. You would think that absolutely every detail had been uncovered. But really, the German horsemen, the Austrians, they had no real interest in sort of going back into what was going on in the war because it didn't always reflect very well upon them. And so, however, more recently, there has been some scholarship, and most of it has been in Germany. And so that is where I was able to find some of these stories. One of the best resources was a book that was published by a man whose father was a stud farm director in Poland during the war. He was a German man who had been sent to Poland to run a horse farm. And he had to flee this horse farm during the war. During the time that he was fleeing, he was a 10-year-old boy, and he had to drive a wagon with 2 Lipizzaner stallions and flee as the Russians were advancing. And his father had died on the trip, and his mother died on the trip, and he ended up alone with this herd of horses. And it had marked him, of course, for life. And so much later, he went back to try to uncover the history. And he had written rather a long book all about the horses and the horse breeding in Germany, Poland. But it was all in German. So,
yeah, well,
so
I was going to ask you about that.
Thing. Yeah.
I'm like speechless. I'm listening to you give these accounts.
And the thing that I did, I knew a little bit about the raid. I knew a little bit about getting the Lipizzaners back. But what I didn't know was how much emphasis the Nazis put on the horses. And what we forget, too, is there are millions. We always talk about the horses killed in World War I. There were millions of horses killed. And we've done stories on that, right, Helena, about World War I and the horses. But there were just as many in World War II.
Right.
And people don't realize that horses played a big part in that war. It wasn't all tanks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was one of the most curious things for me because going in, I didn't know that either. I didn't know why. It was surprising to me when they wanted to breed the perfect military horse. Well, why? I mean, this is, you're thinking about tanks and airplanes in World War II. But when you look at the German and the Russian side, they used horses as much as in World War I, mostly for pulling heavy artillery. Also, there were mounted cavalry. And then there was also the prestige wing of these military jumping teams and horse shows and everything, because the horse hadn't lost its status, during World War. But at that time, the horse played such a central role in people's worldviews. Is the only way I could really explain it. I mean, it was, even if they weren't necessarily, even if the tanks and the airplanes had come along, the people who had trained in the cavalry and who were born, most of these officers, let's say they were born around the turn of the 20th century, they hadn't realized that the horse, the era of the horse cavalry was over. They simply couldn't imagine that. It was unimaginable to them. And that was a very big factor. And I think that's one of the things I really try to look at a lot in the book, is that they were steeped in horse culture. And it was a horse culture that had been, developed since antiquity, men and horses and war. And that had been 1,000 years that had been going on. So if you went and you asked people in 1943, 1944, well, these tanks and these airplanes, obviously we don't need the horses anymore, they didn't say immediately like, oh, yeah, that's obvious. No, there was still a lot of people who thought that the horse had not lost its utility yet as a warrior.
The other thing that I found fascinating and that very interesting is you go into such great depth on things that I knew about, but I didn't know where they came from. I'll give you one example, the Achenbach method. So if you're a driver like I am, we have all heard of the Achenbach method. By the way, I suck at it, Elizabeth. So, and that's driving.
I don't blame you.
That's driving with one hand. And so like if you have a four-in-hand, Helena, all the reins are in one hand.
Yeah.
And I didn't know where that came from. And then how forward seat came to the United States. That was very interesting to learn. So, but if you're not a horse person, you did a good job of explaining all of these things and relaying why they were important. We kind of, as horse people, get it, like why learning forward seat was important. We kind of get that. But as a non-horse person, you go, what the hell's that? And I don't care. But you kind of did a really good job in this book. And I saw a lot of comments on Amazon like this for the non-horse person of really getting the point across about why these horses were so important to the world, not to just Vienna and to Austria, who, they were heroes in Austria, the horses. But you really got the point across that the Germans valued them. The only ones that really didn't value them in this whole equation was the Russians.
Yes,
yeah,
that's true. And I really looked into that issue deeply because the Germans obviously did many very bad things.
They spent a ton of money. I didn't realize that either. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I thought, well, I got to make sure that this really isn't just propaganda, that the Russians were bad. But when I really looked at it and I looked at what became of the horses that were taken by the Russians versus what became of the horses that were in the care of the Germans, it was absolutely clear that the horses that were in the care of the Germans fared better. Whatever you may think of everything else, obviously the Nazis were horrible in what they did to human beings. But if you looked at their record with the horses, on balance, the horses probably fared better because of what the Germans did. That being said, though, Gustav Rau, this German, he was the chief equerry, which means the sort of head horseman honcho during the Third Reich. He was very busily sending horses very far east to Poland, to Ukraine, which is very, very far from Germany, obviously, because he was going to build this entire new empire of horse breeding, not for the benefit of the people that were there, but for the benefit of this German empire. And then as the war started to turn against them, the Russians started to push back, and now these horses were in their path where they might not otherwise have been in the path of the army. So they were very diligent about trying to save the horses and caring for them. But at the same time, their actions also put the horses in danger, no doubt.
I would love to know how you started your research for this book and then where it took you, because I can imagine a series of twists and turns. And I just have this image of you sitting in libraries and actually having to page through real paper-bound
books.
bound books.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the research portion of this project like?
Well, it was grueling and arduous. And I didn't, when I wrote the $80 Champion, I put a tremendous amount of research into that book, too. I mean, people might think, she just kind of interviewed Harry a couple times and wrote down. No, not at all. I mean, I had gone into the historical record very, very carefully, double-checked, old 50-year-old copies of the Chronicle of the Horse for horse show results, and so I thought it seemed like a very big and difficult project when I took that on. I did not know what I was getting myself into when I had this idea that I wanted to write about the story of the rescue of the Lipizzaner. I had no idea where it was going to take me, and it was a lot of time in libraries. I was in the National Archives in Washington, D.C., pulling out old military records. I was scouring the German literature, trying to find sources that would tell me what happened from the German perspective. And I went to the International Museum of the Horse in Lexington, Kentucky, where they had an entire collection of documents and photographs about Vitesse, who is the Arabian stallion who was among the Lipizzaner, and he plays a big part in my story. I follow his story all the way back to California, and so it was a big story with a lot of moving parts, and it was very complicated. And I spent a lot of time also. My editor at Random House, who's a brilliant woman, was she really made me go back at it and go back at it and go back at it to figure out the best way to organize it, because I wanted the book to be accessible, interesting, page-turner, gripping, but I still had to also deal with the fact that it's a big story, and it has been so gratifying to me the way that readers have responded to the story. The response has been overwhelmingly positive. And I have to say, as a writer, it made me so happy, because I feel like I succeeded in taking this enormous amount of information and somehow bringing it into a form that people can read and enjoy, find it as a gripping story.
I was hiding under the desk during the bombing scenes. It was that gripping. And of course, some of these people had dozens of horses with them and very few handlers,
Yes.
very few horsemen. And they're going hundreds of miles during bombing campaigns and in trains and all this stuff. And as horse people, we're going, my horse would have been out of here. I would never have seen my horse again.
I'm in awe. One of the things that's studying the history of horsemen in the 20th century is that I'm truly in awe of them. That I feel like they were horsemen to a degree that perhaps maybe we will never fully understand. And that's even me, where I started riding at a very young age and always kept my horses at home. So I thought I was pretty like one of those horse people who knows. And, I went all the way through Pony Club up to the HA level and et cetera. But it's beyond anything I can imagine how skilled these people were, not just dedicated, but skilled. Because imagine that you've got bombs flying all around, and you've got, 300 or 400 purebred Arabians, stallions, young stallions, mares, and foals. And you're going to move them overland with, like you said, very few people, no trailer, no truck, no bandages, nothing. Just there you go. Life or death.
Luck and skill. But, you think about, I don't know, when I think about the stories of horses or any stories about the wars, I just don't seem to take in the horse's temperament. It's like they weren't different back then than they are now. Their temperaments were still very much the same. So the degree of difficulty would be what we would deal with today times 1,000, because you have, a war going on.
But then again, think about it this way. Sometimes I think about this. We've seen some very devastating things where horses have been caught in the paths of natural disasters in the last 5 years or so. And what do you see? You see horse people going into the disaster areas
Yep.
to get horses out under very difficult situations, because that's what we have to do. We're compelled to do it. So in that sense, I don't know that we have changed that much, you know?
Well, not us and at all. I think that's kind of consistent. And, because I'm thinking, well, what would enable these people to do what they needed to do, despite the fact that you have, I don't want to call them high strung, but high energy horses in difficult circumstances. There must be something about having to do it under survival conditions versus us who have them as recreational animals and hobbies. Is how could we possibly overcome all the obstacles of getting done what they needed to get done? There must be something about that, the context of pure survival, where things just seem to work out better.
But also, too, and this is, what you find, because the way that my book is set up, I set the whole scene in Europe, but then I shift over to the United States, and I made the decision to go back a little bit in time and show our American soldiers before the war started as they were training as horse people. And you start to read about what the American cavalry was doing, the way that they trained cavalry soldiers in the 20th century. So this is not the Cowboys and Indians era at all. This is leading up to World War II. We were still training massive numbers of soldiers on horseback. And what they did also, in order, the kind of training that they would do, they had to get their horse off the picket line, completely tacked up, mounted in under 8 minutes. They would go out into Fort Riley, Kansas, into these vast open spaces, and then at a flat-out gallop in a flock of, there would be, 100 of them or something, with carrying flags and guns, and then anything that was in their path, whether it be steep embankments or ditches or fences, flying over them, sort of like, riding an advanced cross-country course, with 100 other people with you, I mean, sort of a little bit like fox hunting, I guess, in a way. So, but they were very trained, they would go out on these 100-mile rides. And these are all things that have survived into the modern era. We still have endurance riding, and we still have, 3-day eventing. One of the things I thought was really interesting, which I didn't know, was that originally it was called the military. So all of these things have survived into the modern era in slightly different forms. But many of these American cavalry soldiers, they could do all of them brilliantly in their sleep. They were just so highly trained.
Okay, don't tell me any more about that part, because that's where I am right now. Okay, I'm with Colonel Hank Reed, and I'm doing all that in the Buffalo Soldiers and all that stuff. So that's where I am right now, and I'm just waiting to listen to the rest of this. This is a great book. It is the perfect horse, the daring U.S. mission to rescue the priceless stallions kidnapped by the Nazis. I know you can get it on Amazon. Is it everywhere else as well, or is there a special thing for going to your website? Where should we tell them to go?
I mean, really, this book, you should be able to find it pretty much everywhere. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes & Noble. You can get it at your local independent bookstore. I mean, it's been on the bestseller list for the last 4 weeks.
Yay!
Fortunately.
A horse book on the bestseller list.
Right, isn't that great? So, it's pretty widely available. It's been in Costco, which is always a nice discount place to get a really good price. So, you should be able to find it if you're looking for it. There is also really a great audio edition, and I always recommend that to because some horse people were just so busy.
Yeah, that's my situation. But now I miss the pictures.
If you're hauling your horses, you pop it in to listen to it, But yes, you do miss the pictures.
Yeah, and I think the pictures would be fun to see. I'm going to get a copy of the book. I got to look at the pictures. So, library, here I come, because I do want to see the pictures in this book. Helena, you got to listen to. As exciting as she made it sound here, it's more exciting listening to the book.
I want to read the book.
Yeah, because you just lived through it with those people handling those horses, and the things they went through. Just incredible. Well,
thank you.
You're very good. Is there a next book now?
Please make more
we're
books.
We're due to have you back in 5 years. What's the next one?
Well, I'm working on something, but the cat's not even out of the bag yet.
Okay.
So, and it does take me a while, just because, I am so meticulous with my research that I can't just kind of crank them out. But I have had
Is
such
it horse related?
I'm sorry?
Is it horse related?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
We got that out of her, so that's good.
and yeah, I've had such a fantastic response.
5
to these
stars
horse books.
with 80 reviews on Amazon so far.
Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, that was not what I thought when I was halfway through the research. I used to just pull my hair out and despair and cry. So, it was a lot of hard work, but I'm very happy that, I have to tell you, one of the things that was so great was I got an email from the nephew of Colonel Hank Reed, who's one of the heroes in my story, and recently, and he said, not only did I hear a lot of these stories straight from the horse's mouth, but I was actually present for some of them. And he said, you brought them alive in a way that I really didn't think would be possible. And he said, I think Colonel Reed would be proud. And that really touched my heart.
Oh, wow. That's cool. Very cool. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. We appreciate you being on again, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me.
This Tack and Habit segment is sponsored by Equestrian Collections at equestriancollections.com.
Welcome, Danielle, to the Stable Scoop Radio Show. You're going to talk to us about the Gatsby Nylon Breakaway Halter today, aren't you?
I am.
I love breakaway halters. Coach Jen first introduced me to the concept of having a halter that should break away years ago. And I have some in my barn that are not breakaway, and they just sit there collecting dust. Whenever I need to use a halter of any kind, I always go for the breakaways. So why don't you start with telling us what your first impression of this halter was?
Yeah, when it first came, I liked the look of it, and it comes in many different colors. I got the black one. Initially, when I looked at it, the snap that closes under the jaw has a closure that in the past I haven't liked. So I was like, oh no, I don't want to give a bad review on the air. I already don't like this. But then I started playing with it, and it was actually really easy to use. The ones I've used before were really stiff and just not worth playing
Did it have
with.
that
this
little
one actually
tongue?
worked really well.
That little tongue
Yeah.
thing that you have to push
The little
in?
flat
Yeah.
one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but this one works really easy. Like it goes on, clicks on really easy, and you click it off really easy. So like when I first got it, I was a little nervous, but then when I played with it, I was like, okay, this is good. But otherwise, like it's a nice, cheap. Like it's not a very expensive halter, so it's a very good everyday halter. You're not afraid to use it and ruin it. It also comes in many cool colors. So if you wanted a couple, like if you're somebody who likes having a whole bunch of different colors for your horse, it's a good option that way too.
I mean, we're talking $10 here, I think, was the... Well, let me check. On Equestrian Collections, the price is $10.99.
Yeah.
So.
Which is great. But you know what? I mean, you started to say the word cheap, and I know that's sort of a taboo word, but it's a good word in this context because it's a breakaway halter. So, right, the point of the breakaway of the crown piece, the leather crown piece, is so that it gives in an emergency. It will break. The leather is more inclined to break than the nylon. But, sometimes the fact that these halters are not super sturdy means that other parts of them will break as well. And so, not obviously in everyday use, but in extreme stress, So again, and then should that happen, should it break anywhere, whether it's on the crown piece or some other, moving part of the halter, $10, $11 to get another one is no big deal. It's done its job. That's worth way more than $10.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I think it's a great everyday halter for that reason. Because I've always been taught to use a breakaway halter. I don't know that I've ever used a halter that isn't, just because my first instructor is like, this is what you do because this, and this can happen.
Well, 2 days ago, we had Nigel tied up in the aisleway, and Scooter came by, and of course, Scooter, being the bad boy little pony that he is, decided to, give Nigel the evil eye, and Nigel pulled back really hard and broke the crown piece on his halter, and he would have hung himself had he not. So, I mean, we also on the ties have the baler twined at the top. We have extra security, but the crown piece broke before anything. And now this one, does it have a buckle on the chin strap, on the nose strap, so that you can adjust that too?
It does. It's adjustable on the nose band, and also on you have pretty many holes on the leather strap to make it bigger or smaller.
And is
one problem.
Yeah, go ahead.
One problem I had is I have an Arabian But my bridle and my current halter are both horse sizes. So I got this one in the horse size as well. And it's too big for him. So you just want to make sure you check the sizing. I think he would probably be better in a cob. Because he's either like on the later holes of a cob or the really small size of a horse. It's kind of in between. So it does run a little bit on the bigger side, at least from what I've used.
Okay. Yeah. And they do tend to stretch out too when you use them, and they get muddy and dirty and rainy. They do stretch a bit.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, you can find it at equestriancollections.com. It's the Gatsby Classic Nylon Breakaway Halter with Snap. It has a real short name. And you'll find it for $10.99. I mean, and they're showing colors of brown, burgundy, green, hunter, navy, tan, purple, royal blue, mint green, and orange. So you have, hey, hunting season's coming up. Get a cheap halter, orange. For hunting season. That's coming up. So it would be great to have that. You can find it at equestriancollections.com. Thank you, Danielle. We appreciate it.
Great review.
You're welcome.
Take care.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Well, as we announced last week on the show, you are getting married coming up quickly.
Can you believe it? I'm getting married. It feels like I just got divorced.
It does, actually. I don't know why.
Though.
It's been years, but it seems like, in some ways, it seems like 20 years ago, and in some ways, it seems like yesterday.
I know. Yes. Never, I've been getting a few really nice notes from listeners via email and Facebook Messenger, just wishing me the best of luck and congratulations. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who's reached out to me with warm wishes. It means the world to me. And it means the world to Buck too, because of course I share everyone with him. So we're getting married on October 7th in Newport. We're such a couple of punks. We're doing a pop-up wedding in the park. We're just showing up with our wedding officiant and our kids and a friend, and that's it. So there's going to be 9 of us in total, and we're just going to show up in the park.
What happens if there's like a rock concert going on that day?
Well, we did check to see if there were any events.
Okay,
it's not exactly the kind of park that has a lot of events. It's stunning. It's called Queen Anne Square. And if you Google it, you'll find beautiful photographs, but it's actually an artist's display. So it's open space, but you just have to Google it and read about it. It's a tribute to the history of New England and then Newport in particular. But it's so Yankee and so perfect. You guys will love it.
Oh, I'm looking at pictures of it now. It is pretty. And there's a big church at the end, so that's appropriate right there.
That's appropriate. We don't have to go inside the church because the walls might fall down.
Is there a rain plan for...
The rain plan is just down the street.
You're going to do a pop-up wedding in the church? Hey, we're here!
Yeah. Well, there's this place called the Seamen's Church Institute, which is it's a safe haven for any seafaring people. It's really open to anybody, but it was primarily built for mariners who needed a safe place in a storm, of all, whatever that storm might be, whether it was a weather storm or a life storm, an emotional storm.
Or what, yeah.
So they have this tiny little chapel that will serve as our plan B. And then there's a gazebo up the street, which is plan C.
Well, you're this big podcaster in Newport now. Just call the Breakers and say we're coming over.
Well, that's what Buck wanted to do at first. I was like, no, I don't. He's like, it could just be 10 people at the Breakers. I was like, all right.
Yeah, they have a big yard there.
They have a big yard. So
with ocean views.
Then we're going to dinner at a really fancy restaurant called 41 North, which is right on the waterfront.
Oh, didn't you do a review on them?
No.
I've heard them mentioned. You've mentioned them. Your name sticks out.
We've been there before because it's just a really nice restaurant in Newport. So you kind of have to hit it up at least once. If you live around here, you got to go to 41 North. And it's, if we had a huge budget, we'd go to 41 North regularly. But right now we can go for special events. But we'll do a dine and dish on 41 North for everybody. But I'm really excited because for all of my fashionista horse friends, you guys are going to love this. I am not wearing a white dress. Nope. I'm wearing a dress called Deep Harbor. And I'm going to
Has
wear...
fish on it?
What?
It has fish on it?
Nope, no fish.
Okay.
Nope,
Deep
no fish.
Harbor, that's...
I'm going to wear, instead of a veil, I am such a punk. I couldn't even.
Are you wearing a riding helmet?
I should. I totally should.
Just deck it out. You know, put the white, what's the thing called you wear in your head as a bride?
The veil?
Veil. Put the white veil on your helmet.
That's not a bad idea. Well, I was thinking about wearing my tall boots with my dress because that would be pretty cool. No, I'm wearing peacock feather fascinator in my hair.
Oh, really? You're going to be so British.
I'm thinking of Ascot, you know?
Yeah.
I'm channeling a little bit of that Ascot.
You're channeling a little royals. That's
that
cool.
Crazy show.
Oh,
yeah,
that's cool. And what's your dress is blue? Is that what I got out of that?
It's called Deep Harbor. So it's this like blue teal color. Which,
oh, cool.
Yeah.
And what's Buck wearing?
He's going to wear a blue suit.
Cool. And has Gracie spent months picking out her outfit?
Nope. We went to a lovely little thrift shop right here in Tiverton, Rhode Island called Cutie Curls. And we found her a gorgeous dress to wear and a scarf and some jewelry. And we actually got like 5 things for her whole outfit and spent $25.
You have the best thrift shops up there because you have rich people that give away their stuff after they wear it once.
It's true.
Yeah, it's a little different than the thrift shops we have down here.
And the woman who runs the shop, she's a great curator because she has a really good eye and a good sense of style. So she picks, I don't know how she does it, but pretty much everything in this thrift store, you can mix and match and it just goes together. It's great.
When Helena and Jennifer worked together in Massachusetts, that was especially high-end thrift shops.
Yeah.
We're up there, and they used to go shopping, and they used to get these dresses and stuff, and it used to be like $25.
It's awesome.
And literally, the rich people that owned them would wear them once and then donate them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they wouldn't wear them more than once. So,
or if they wore them at all, there's a lot of stuff that's brand new with tags.
The tags, yeah.
You know, and when you have a growing 13-year-old, you really, I can't be spending money every week on something that she grows out of stuff.
Right.
She's even grown out of my stuff, so I can't even lend her my clothes anymore. She grew out of my tall boots already. The only thing she has not grown out of, because I'm a little fuller in the butt, is my breeches. She's got to wear her own breeches.
Well, very cool. Congratulations. I'm so excited for you. I can't wait to see pictures.
Yep, we'll have them.
All right, good. And are you going on a honeymoon immediately or anytime?
No, we take a trip in the spring, every spring, to the Caribbean. So this spring's trip will be our sort of delayed honeymoon. We're just going to spend the weekend in Newport, though, and bounce around. Actually, it's kind of romantic. We're going to go hit up all the places that we visited during our courtship, our 4-year-long courtship.
Didn't you meet in Newport?
We did,
yeah,
quite by accident.
Yeah.
Well, we met actually under different circumstances. That his daughter was my trainer, so that was how we met. But our first date was completely by accident, and that was in Newport.
Can you go to the Tennis Hall of Fame for me and see it? Because I still haven't seen it all the trips we've made to Newport.
Yes, we're going to do a feature on the Tennis Hall of Fame because we met one of the tennis pros who works there right now. We met him at the Yacht Me party on the houseboat.
And I think they just redid that in recent years. They
did. It was like a multi-million-dollar renovation. It's beautiful.
It is a beautiful really spot. Cool. I mean, it's just like in the middle of the city, and then you have this little oasis of beautiful tennis courts. And they're if I remember right, they're grass.
Yep.
So they're beautiful green tennis courts. It's neat. I can't wait. Next time we come up, we're going to the Tennis Hall of Fame.
Honestly, Newport is the most fun you can have that's not on horseback. I'm like, if I could spend all of my time on horses, of course I would. But since I have to be on land every now and again, I totally love Newport. I mean, that's why we started the podcast.
I think you would live there if you could find a spot that was affordable, which is not happening in Newport, and you could keep your horses.
Yeah, I would totally live there, but now I'll never give up my farm.
No, I know you love your farm, and you should. It's cute. It's really cute. It's perfect you.
And really my ponies.
And your ponies.
They're all roly and poly.
Well, congratulations again. We're very, very excited for you guys.
Thank you.
All right, that's about it for today. And remember, join us Friday. Give us a call, 9:30 to 10:30 on Horses in the Morning. Just go to the website. The phone number's right on there. And, just say hi. Just, why you like the shows, what you like about podcasting. It's International Podcast Day and our 5,000th episode, so we're just celebrating. So join us and have a little fun. Of course, you can find all the details about today's show at stablescoop.com. Go buy the book. This would make a great Christmas gift, too, if somebody hasn't read it already, The Perfect Horse. If you're interested in history at all, I know I'm talking a lot about this book, but I'm loving this book. And it really does have 5 stars with 80 reviews, which nobody gave it less than 5 stars. And I'm going to write a review on Amazon here shortly, too, as soon as I finish it. Can't wait to see what happens next. And I know what happens. That's the thing.
I know. But she's such a good storyteller. It doesn't matter.
It's a historical drama, and she really makes it a historical drama.
Yeah.
So it's cool. That's it. All right, Helena, we got to go.
We got to go. It was fun, Glenn. Thanks, everybody, for following along. There'll be more next week. Until then, happy scooping.